Okay, I think we'll get started. I'll just click Start the AI summary. So we'll get a nice little summary of this later. Um, and yeah, just open by introducing myself, I suppose. So welcome to session K. I'm Paul Shannon. I'm head of technology and innovation at eLife. I've been with eLife for 7.5 years, which means although my background previously wasn't in scholarly communication and publishing, it was in technology. I often say, oh, I'm from outside the publishing world, but actually, 7.5 years I think makes me part of this world now. So it's a great opportunity for me to talk about the new eLife publishing model that we launched last year, but in conjunction with the open technology and open source software that we produce in order to enable that for others as well. So it's the first time we've had the opportunity to talk about both. So yeah, the year of Open Science 2023 was a big year for eLife. Because we launched our model at the very end of January 2023. And I've also got a little update about that as well. So briefly look at the agenda. So there's about 35 to 40 minutes of content, I think. I want to cover both these major areas, eLife's new model, talk about the benefits and just explain a little how it works, and why it's better for open science. And then because we've just finished the first year of it, we've also got some good statistics on how that's gone, where it's going, and things like that. So I'll cover that briefly, and then move on to how the open infrastructure we've built to enable that can help others adopt a similar model as well. So we talk about this as the publish, review, curate style model. So preprint is posted first, a review then happens, and then some element of curation goes on. We've got a number of platforms and open source tools that can allow people to conduct exactly the same sort of thing, either in their own institution, organization, or as a small group. So um, I'll talk about these in the order that they sort of the manuscript flows through this. So Katahi is where you submit, do the peer review, and publish the peer review reports and the assessments, which then you get into the enhanced preprint platform, which showcases the preprints and the reviews together. And Sciet is where you can do extra curation and things like that. And I'll pull all that back together again with a case study from Biophysics Colab, who are using all of these tools to do exactly that. And that might be something that you or organizations that you work with could adopt. And it just shows that we're building the infrastructure to allow others to do this. As this is a more sort of informal session than some of the sessions at this conference, this is like a Zoom meeting style. So feel free to put your cameras on if you want. I can see your faces. And we can have a little discussion at the end. There'll be time for that. So yeah, just make a note of questions and things like that. There'll be a few pauses as I go through. So if there's something really that needs clarifying or whatever, then feel free to put up your hand and I'll try and keep an eye out for that as well. Okay, so first of all, I suppose we should talk a little bit about eLife. So not everyone knows who we are. If you're a bioscientist, you probably come across eLife as the eLife journal, but the organization was set up in 2012 to be led by scientists. So all of the peer review and the editorial side, the journal that we produce, is all led by scientists. There are no paid professional editors there. It's all practicing scientists that evaluate others' work. But as well as producing the journal, we've always worked on open source systems too. And every piece of software we've ever written has been open for others to use. In the last few years, we've been building software that others can use while we run it, if you like, as well. So trying to make it easy for others to adopt, easy for others to emulate and copy what we're doing, so that the generous funding we've got from these institutions here all gets used elsewhere. And it's because we believe that really it's not about where you publish that's important. It's actually what you publish. So just as a bit of context to where this new model and these new ideas came from, with the growth of preprints over the last few years, particularly accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a lot more uptake of that, particularly in bioscience and medical sciences, the areas that eLife publishes in. And now they're seen as a permanent part of the scholarly record. They are acknowledged by funders and research institutions. So preprints are, slowly becoming the norm for a lot of different disciplines. They've already been the norm for certain disciplines, physical sciences, and so on. So with this acceleration, we've been trying to embrace that within our publishing model, and eLife's always been about open science, and our mission is about accelerating discovery and promoting responsible behaviours in science. So we want to take preprints and push them as far as we can to embrace the rise and this understanding that people are now having. So in a world where preprints are the norm, so what is the role of the publisher? And for us, we thought we'd come up with with a set of criteria for a better model. We want to make sure that we can make things faster, but still make sure that they're good for science and good for scientists, make things more transparent, and give more control to authors as well, while increasing value across the whole of the landscape. So our new model is slightly different to how we used to work. So we used to work like a traditional journal. We'd accept and reject. And we did away with the idea of accepting and rejecting things into the eLife's journal. So rather than selecting a specific set, so somewhere around 11-15% of papers that were selected, we wanted to ensure that all the work that's done for peer review and all the work that people are doing around the assessments of these things is available. So anything that is submitted to eLife, if it's sent for review, will get published as what we call a reviewed preprint. So if you look at the flow on this diagram, you submit by submitting a preprint. So that's either you send it to us and we put it on a preprint server for you, or you send us the URL of the preprint server. And eLife's been only reviewing preprints since before when we launched this model last year. At that point, a number of the sort of practicing scientists who are part of the editorial board will decide whether to review that paper, and they make that decision based on whether they can add real value through a review to that paper, whether we've got the expertise and whether we've got the capacity as well. We'd like to review every preprint in the world and ensure it's got some sort of assessment on it, but we have to be realistic about the level of time that would take. So that's how we sort of decide how things get sent for review. It then gets sent out in a very traditional sort of way for peer review to 3 different reviewers, all handled by a reviewing editor. And another unique part of eLife's process is that those reviews then come back as part of a consultation, and the reviewers and the editor get together and return one set of reviews to the authors. Now that's better for the authors because they just get one set of instructions to take. And with the new model, the result that they get back is the reviews are going to be public, and they also make some private comments, things that are less important to the broader reader, if you like, things like spelling mistakes and like missing things here and there and so on. But the majority of the review is public, and the other thing that they get is an assessment that we call the eLife assessment. And that's based on, it's a short paragraph that shows, that talks about the strength of the evidence and the significance of the findings in the paper. And that's something that we've used to create a more nuanced output rather than a single binary decision of whether we accept or reject it in eLife. And that's been the sort of the major change. So before we actually make the review preprint published on the website, we allow the authors to send their response, and in doing so, we can publish that response too. And at that point, when everyone's happy, we will publish the review preprint. And at this point, you get a citable object on the eLife website. It looks very similar to a version of record article, comes with a PDF with all the peer reviews, the assessments, and so on in it. And that's an object that you can then use for putting on your CV, adding to grant applications, and for others to build on. And then thinking about author control, that's when the authors get to choose what to do next. So they can then revise the paper based on the feedback from the reviewers, or they can decide at that point, actually, no, the work's done. They're happy with the assessment and the review. There are no changes needed, and they want to make that the end of that that the changes to that paper and publish it as a version of record, and it gets sent off to indexing in PubMed and things like this. Or at that point, they can decide that eLife is no longer the right destination for that paper and then send it to another journal. We don't hold them into our process at that point. The majority of authors we've found take that top route there and make a revision. And then at that point, we publish a second version of the review preprint with the changes and with any additional comments that have needed to be made. And if necessary, we will update the assessment as well. So this is how it looks. It's, as I say, it looks like an eLife journal article. But in the top right there, you see there's this distinct element that shows that this is a review preprint. So we're saying this is something that's was a preprint and has now been reviewed by eLife. It's available early. It's got all this extra information for you. You can download the PDF with all the information on it from there as well. We include the timeline so you can see when this first got posted to the preprint server, all the different review and revision that's happened on the paper as well. And then the peer reviews are available along with the assessment information and editor information inside the peer review tab, so you can view those at detail. But the main thing is the eLife assessment, which specifically sits just under the abstract, so it can't be missed. We make an effort to highlight it there with a different background color, and that's the thing that we want people to really pay attention to, because this is eLife's decision and idea around precisely how this paper fits into the scholarly record and how important and useful it is. And you'll see there's a couple of items that are highlighted in bold. They are what we call our common vocabulary, and that uses a number of terms to make sure that even though this is a free text thing that the editors and the reviewers come together and write in conjunction, we want to make sure that we're using the same terms to assess the quality and significance. So just a quick look at these, the terms. So the significance of findings, we go right from landmark to papers that where the findings are just deemed as useful or of no impact. And then for the strength of evidence, it can range from exceptional to being incomplete or inadequate. When I get into the data later about the first year, you'll see that actually these are used in the same sort of way you'd expect across the board. So rather than having just a simple binary decision whether you're in eLife or not, everything that gets sent for peer review is published, and it gets published with the peer reviews, with the author's response to those reviews, and the assessment that uses this common vocabulary. And that's the new thing that we've launched and been running for a year. So again, looking at our criteria, we sort of assess it like why we think this is going to be different. So it's faster because we're now getting the review preprint out in 3 months, whereas it used to take around 9 months to peer review, get revisions and get the version of record out. So people can build on those findings and use those findings or use their citable review preprint object in applications and so on much earlier. It's good for science because you're getting this nuanced assessment, which each one has a lot of thought that goes into it, and it's something that's quick to read and gives you a quick overview of what these expert analysis of this paper is. And we think that accelerates discovery, and it definitely makes it the whole process a lot more transparent. It's good for scientists because you get this published output earlier, which you can use for other things. And also values the time of authors as well, because you get the speed of publication, the fact that there's this information is coming back to you quite quickly means that we care about people spending the time doing the research and finding the next discovery rather than spending time talking to us about publishing. And we can get those results out in a fair and quick manner. The transparency again is very important to this new model because the review preprints are all in the public domain. They're registered in things like Crossref and so on with a DOI as you'd expect from any other type of journal article. The criteria for the assessment, that table is available on the website, so people know what they're going to be assessed against before they're submitting to eLife. All of the comments are published along with the author the author responses to those, and there's that real detailed timeline of how the papers evolved, really, from when it was first posted as a preprint, for when eLife saw it, when the reviews were done, and how the authors responded and so on. So you can really see how author, how many revisions it's gone through before it gets made into a version of record, how long that's taken, and really see, a very transparent view of what's happened to this paper since it was first sent our way. And the control to the authors is very important. It's definitely up to them when they declare the version of record to be, to be final. And then they can decide whether to spend more time doing the recommended extra work or extra experiments or changes and things like this. And as I said, most of the authors we've seen so far have done. But the increased value to the whole sort of scholarly endeavor is quite good, because we're now only charging for sort of the peer review and publication of the reviewed preprint. So we were able to reduce the publication fee from previously when we were doing a model that had accept reject involved in it. And then, because everything's faster and things are done more transparently, there's generally a lot of savings in time as well. So we're hoping that people see the value that this brings to the scholarly landscape. So when we first launched the model, this was some of the idea or some of the reaction we got. Some very people saying we're being bold and changing things that good to try these things out and question these things. Some there posting a poll that's saying that this is revolutionary and needed, although as you can see, it's still quite balanced. It hasn't been for everybody, and the few people were against it, some people for it, some people, and the majority of people, I think, were sort of let's wait and see. So now that we're a year in, we've had quite a bit of coverage in the press around this sort of stuff. I think it's created a lot of debate and important debate and discussion around these sort of moving forward in open science practices, which has been really healthy and a lot of times has helped us adapt what we're doing, but also convince people to move things forward. So yeah, it's had quite an impact from a point of view that people talking about it, thinking about it, and so on. So it's been great to be involved in that sort of stuff. So now we can actually look at some of the numbers for how we got on 1 year on. So we've had 6,207 teams of researchers submit to eLife under this new model. And 1,332 of those have ended up going out for peer review and being published as a first version. And then of those, we've managed to publish 504 of the revisions as well. Some of those are still under revision. And as we said earlier, we've managed to bring down that median number of days from submission to publication to just 91 days. So we're seeing these review preprints being put out into the world, much more quickly than we did with our older model. We're seeing around just under 30% of papers sent out for review. As I said, there are constraints on what we can review, and we only want to review them if we think that our editorial team think that they can add to the value of the scholarly record with a review on that paper. So that proportion seems to be about right, but these are the sort of numbers that we've been keeping an eye on all year, and drive, I suppose, the next steps in the evolution of this type of model. One thing that we were asked about and also concerned about ourselves is whether the quality might drop with this changing model. I'm pleased to say that actually, if you look at the distribution of how the terms are used, that we've not seen a shift in lowering quality, and we've not seen anything that has moved towards the other side either. It's very much the sort of bell-shaped curve that you'd expect from this sort of stuff. And then looking at the strength of the evidence as well. The significance of the papers, and we're still getting sent papers that are important fundamental work in fields that we're used to receiving papers in. So yeah, some people thought that it might affect the quality of the papers in the journal and things like that, and we're seeing actually that that's not to be the case at the moment. So yeah, we've been pleased with that. This seems to be going in the right direction. quite a revolutionary change in dropping something like accept reject could have turned people away, but we've found that that's not really been the case. So we've been pleased with how far we've managed to push it so far. So yeah, as I say, we're quite pleased with that. So the model works well. The software that we were running this sort of stuff on is working well. So now we're in the position where we want to encourage others to adopt similar models. So whether it's exactly the same flavor of this publish review curate model that eLife are using, or something that's slightly different, that's something that we're trying to encourage. So I was pleased that we had this sort of interactive type session. So when we get towards the end, hopefully some people have got some questions and ideas around this. So to answer this question, how can others organizations adopt this similar model? I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about our open infrastructure. So as I said earlier, everything that we build at eLife has always been open source. And that means it's been launched under the most permissible licenses for you to take that software and run it yourselves, adapt it and use it as you wish with no constraints. But the last 3 or 4 years, we've realized that actually it's still quite a big leap for people to be able to take someone else's software and run it. So we've been partnering with other organizations that work with lots of open source software as well, and looking to try and run these tools ourselves and allow others to utilize them while we look after the software, if you like. So we run it, we host it, or we help you host it and get it configured for yourself. So that's actually made quite a large ecosystem in the sort of PRC world in terms of software, with our core products being the eLife website, the eLifesciences.org. If you go there, you'll see our magazine content, our research article content, and the review preprints as well, along with all the other stuff around how our communities and technology and other areas of eLife develops. We're much larger and more broad than just the publishing efforts. We have Sciet, which is a publish, review, curate platform that brings together review and curation from anyone who's doing it, across the world, as long as they can give us reviews of preprints in a format that we can ingest and take into our platform. Then we allow that on site, and I'll delve into that in a bit more detail later. We have the enhanced preprint platform, or EPP as we call it at the moment, which can be is the software that basically powers the reviewed preprint that we just looked at. So it can be used on its own. It can be used as part of another website. So we use it as part of the eLife website to showcase the content there. And also it can be used as part of Katahi as a publishing endpoint for that. Katahi is something that we've been investing in for about 7 years, along with but it's actually owned by the Coko Foundation at the moment. So we have a team of people at Coko who work on Katahi for us. And that's a whole publishing platform which does everything from submission through peer review management to publishing of reviews and assessments, and as well as things like typesetting and production as well. So eLife currently use that for publishing the assessments and basically sorting out that side of things, so we can get all the pieces of public information we need to go with the preprint, to post that information to the enhanced preprint platform to make the review preprints. That's what we use Katahi for. We'd like to use it more for more of our process, but as you could probably tell, we've been quite busy over the last year or two. So we'll get to that at some point. But for now, we use it for sort of the end of the process. But still work with it, develop it, and work with others. And you'll see this from the case study towards the end of this presentation. Are able to use it for the whole life cycle and have this option to either publish their content with Katahi or with the enhanced preprint platform at the end, and then send their data, their reviews, their assessments, and so on onto Sciet. And then we also have our core product, Data Hub, which basically links all these things together. That's an internal thing, but still open source for others to use. We then have a set of sort of ecosystem products that we're involved in some way, and that might be through funding, consultancy, or the fact that we use these things to connect stuff. So you'll have heard from people from pre-review and probably a few other sessions at this conference. We work with the technology for them. They're also one of the main groups on Sciet that showcase reviews of preprints. Um, Core Notify, we're talking in a conference session earlier as well. Um, and we use that to connect all the various pieces and pass information about peer review between the pieces of this ecosystem. We work with a emerging standard called DocMaps, which was pioneered by the Knowledge Futures group. We use that, for example, to pass the peer review information about an eLife review preprint to bioRxiv, so they can show those same reviews alongside the original preprint on bioRxiv. Europe PMC also do the same using that same technology. We use PubPub as well, an open source publishing platform for some of the sort of content management side of things and providing websites for people. And then we use the tools behind Stenciller, things that help document conversions to do a lot of the conversion between things in the system. Interesting thing about Stenciller, excuse me, is that it's as well as being a good document conversion authoring platform, it's taken itself in a new direction that involves a lot of large language models and AI built into the authoring platform so that you can see when an AI has generated content, who's approved that generation of that content, how it's been used, which AI or GPT or LLM's been used inside the author of a document. So it's taking a very interesting direction, something that might, wed very well with what we're doing with pushing these things forward. So yeah, I'm pleased to be working with them. And then we have our ecosystem partners. As I mentioned, bioRxiv, it's actually medRxiv as well, and all of the people we work with at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories. We use the XML files that they produce to render their preprints on bioRxiv to feed in, if you like, into the system of the enhanced preprint platform. So we can render the review preprint, and they've been great partners. Hypothesis we use for both annotation on eLife, but also that's how we store a lot of the reviews and assessments in the ecosystem. We have Semantic Scholar, which provides things like all the paper recommendation parts of both Sciet and Kataia, which I'll talk about later. ORCID as our authentication provider that links us to the scholarly world, and Okta that are the platform that allows us to use that along with other logins like email and Twitter logins and stuff like that for Sciet. And then Crossref, because all of Sciet, all the papers that get recommended in Katahi all need that robust metadata. And then so we work with their API teams and the data on that. So it's quite a broad ecosystem. There's a lot to it. But you can use any one part of it or all parts of it to really showcase a PRC model. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about now, starting with Katahi. So, next generation scholarly publishing platform, I think is exactly the great way to describe it, because it has all of the parts that you need to be able to perform any type of review, whether it's traditional peer review models, something like eLife, or whether it's just like if you see this quote here from Professor Emily Gurley at Johns Hopkins. We met her just as the pandemic had sort of taken hold of the world in 2020, and they were leading. She was leading with others the novel coronavirus research compendium, who were providing assessments of preprints around COVID for practitioners to use in the field. Basically, things need to be quick; they needed to be well understood. So she got together with a lot of her team there, and we're using any tool they can get their hand on to try and provide reviews of these preprints and give their take on where things were going. So we work with them. We change the way Katahi works. We give because Katahi can have such a sort of flexible model to its peer review. It has like a built-in configuration manager where you can add new form fields, take them away, change the way that they work, give them different names and all this sort of thing. They're able to experiment with their process to make things that were much faster. As you can see here from her quote, that when time was the essence, they were able to save lots of hours. And I can't remember the exact number, but it was almost over 10 hours a week, I think they ended up saving, just because they were able to use our tool and automate a lot more of what they were doing. And it's a great tool that's also built to scale, so it can be the scale right down, so it'll be quite cheap to run. We can run multiple sort of organizations on one instance of it as well. So we can share the cost and things like that. So it's a real great way to get into reviewing a preprint song, because you can do it at a very small cost on the side of your existing operation, or as a new thing if you're not getting funding and so on. And we can all help out with that sort of thing. Just a little look inside it, behind the curtain, if you like, on Katahi. So you've got your sort of standard submission form, and then when you're an editor, you can keep a track of the progress of how the reviews are going and the reviewer matching and things like that is happening. And then here there's a quite neat way of tracking whether reviewers have been accepted and who's actually been able to do review and so on. And then this orange screen on the right here shows some of the triaging tools. So you'll see that list of manuscripts there has actually been pulled in from a mixture of Semantic Scholar, that's the small icon that you see on the top three there, or from a canned search, if you like, for that organization's discipline. So when they're so every morning someone will log in and they'll get this list of newly updated papers that has been fetched from these various services based on the AI-driven ones, certainly, based on what you've selected to review, what's interested you before, and the terms that you put into your sort of canned search. So that you're servicing relevant papers that have recently been either updated or added, so that you can then, go off and read them, decide whether to review them, and then Katai also enables that, which I'll talk about later when we talk about biophysics code, because that's the model that they use. So yeah, it's integrating this AI into the existing interface of user experience of review and peer review that is allowing people to find preprints earlier and get reviews out for them, basically. So when the review is done, the assessment's made, the author response is written, we then bundle that up and put it onto what we call the enhanced preprint platform. And that collates all that assessment and review information into one place. We use the JATS XML standard. It currently interprets a number of different sort of implementations of that standard. The one that we use for eLife is the one that comes out of bioRxiv. But it also can take any other source. Stenciler's tooling behind the scenes enables you to convert from lots of different formats, things like Word documents and LaTeX and so on, but also sort of computerized formats, JSON-based formats and things like that, so you can hook it into existing systems. A thing that I didn't know when we talked about the eLife part is actually we generate the PDF from the HTML content. So there's no external and separate typesetting service, but we do get a page flowed, specifically laid out PDF actually from all that content. Actually, I think I've got one of these on the next slide. Yeah, here we are. So this example on the right is the flowed XML. So it flowed HTML into a paged PDF, and that has sort of the quality of a typeset template as well. But that's all done on the fly, and we can make tiny changes per paper so that images can be made bigger or smaller if they don't really fit and things like this. So that's a big part of this platform. The other side is bringing the peer reviews and making those public and easy to use. And you can see there on the peer review tab, we can quickly jump down to the different reviews and read what you want, really. What we've found from our user experience research is that people will come to the paper, they'll care about the usual signals of the title, the authors, the institutions they're from, the abstract. We've then got the, as you can see here, the eLife assessment front and center on that page. And then if they're really interested, they can then jump into the detail of peer review, and that makes the whole transparent thing work. And this will, although this is the things we've seen so far are all eLife based, this is completely brandable and adaptable for different types of model as well. So this orange one on the right here, this is using Sciet branding to sort of show that we could also use a mixture of Katahi and the EPP platform to power a preprint server, for example, or a preprint server that then later includes peer reviews and creates a review preprint, which is what the example here is. But also, if your model wants to be a different type of post-publication peer review, this one on the left here is based on models popularized by F1000 and open research platforms, where it highlights revision summaries and things like this, where there's no editor in the chain. So, we've explored how this will work for lots of different models. As I said, with Qatar, you can sort of configure that yourself. And then once you've decided on what your model is, we can make the enhanced preprint platform do that. And there's only one enhanced preprint platform that's currently run by eLife, funded by our funders, so that we can do the review preprint stuff, so that we can do the publication for people like Biophysics Colab, who we'll talk about shortly. So, again, another low cost of entry for people, but you're getting this sort of publisher level quality output. And that's the thing that I think eLife bring to the technology side a lot more than people maybe realize, is that we have our publishing team, our experts in publishing, always looking at the designs, the way that we build things, so that we're getting that publisher level quality built into everything that we do. So that makes our platform, certainly in the open source world, I think a little more unique. Which brings us nicely onto Sciet, which is, we call it the home of preprint curation, because we're trying to highlight groups that are doing review of preprints, but then showcasing that in some way, whether that's through an evaluation, or an assessment, an eLife, like an assessment or summary or an endorsement statement, or some sort of editorial paragraph or highlight or something like that. But we're also allowing any individual to come along and be part of the ecosystem by creating lists and organizing papers, and adding small annotations about why they've added those papers to lists, and allowing lists to be named after different things. So for organizations, we have this concept of a group, and a group can be a small community of experts. It can be a large funder platform, or a journal club, or a lab or something like that, who have that sort of dedication, that level of discipline to be doing either peer review or a level of curation based on other people's peer reviews. So a nice thing about Sciet is that, because there's so much review on there, that you can actually do the curation side without the review. So it's just quite a useful sort of stepping stone into getting into the world of PRC, and something that organizations can do in parallel to their existing efforts. And what we found is we've got a few groups, and I think I've got a few shots of these that are doing things on the side of their existing stuff to promote their main thing. And we're hoping that is a nice pathway for them to get into more open and more transparent science using this method. So we take the curation object, the eLife assessment in this example, a step further than we do with the eLife review preprints, and we make that front and center on the page, and make it a big part of what you're looking at when you're trying to discover papers on Sciet. We offer a search functionality. Type in your details in there, and it will highlight the articles that have been curated over the others as well. So it's a real sort of indicator of trust on whether this preprint is worth your time to read, worth your time to investigate further. One of the unique things about Sciet, as I mentioned before, is that it aggregates all of the people doing preprint review in the world into one place, and that results in having a number of similar groups providing review on the same preprint, which you don't really get in the journal world. So here we've got the company of biologists, Prelights, have highlighted this particular preprint. The life science editors have written a short review about it, and then eventually it was submitted to eLife, and eLife have written their review and their curation statement. So you've got those three different sets of experts at different times in the evolution of this particular paper, all contributing to it, and all available in one place on Sciet. So that's kind of the thing it offers for curation on articles. For groups, you get a landing page where you can see all your different collections and show what you've been endorsing, and showcase your curation. This is sort of a nice place for like scholarly societies or small organizations to showcase their expertise to their members and so on, while also providing that extra level of curation or review to the world of preprints. And then you can organize lists with lots of add some meaning to the list so that in this case that we've got recommendations from a particular lab, and you can have multiple types of lists, multiple types of collection, and really start slicing and organizing the literature, whether you've reviewed it or not. Excuse me. And then another couple of things worth highlighting on Sciet that we've seen recently are people now adopting our annotation tool, so they can, when they add something to a list, it asks you why you're adding it to a list, and people are saying why, and also using it to update on the preprint, saying that there's actually new figures here and things like this. And then we've seen the lab set up a list to showcase what their journal club are doing, just so that if you've got scientists in a lab somewhere doing all this work, then why not make it open? Why not make it available to the rest of the world? If you know that lab or you respect that lab or you work with that lab, then that will be a good signal that that paper there is probably worth your time. So it's about aggregating all these signals together, but giving prominence to groups, to societies, to publishers and people that want to curate the content and give their opinion of their experts to it, give them a place to really showcase it. So Sciet is growing. We've got 25 reviewing groups on there. 42,000 evaluations. So that could either be from a highlight or a comment like that, or a full peer review or author response from somewhere like eLife, which actually covers over 26,000 preprints as evaluation. So if you want to find trustworthy preprints, Sciet is a good place for people to start. Which finally leads me on to Biophysics Colab, who are using all these tools together. So they're an equitable, inclusive, and transparent alternative to traditional science publishing, focusing particularly on biophysics. They're using all of these parts of the system to review content in Katahi, to publish their reviews, and then find papers using the AI. And you can see here that every morning someone will come in and they're pulling the latest biophysics papers and choose which ones to select for consideration. Then they can use Katahi to it'll contact the author and ask for permission for them to review the paper. And that's how they've been operating their model. They're then going to open it up to submissions later, and that's where this comes in. We've now enabled a branding of on the enhanced preprint platform, so they can start using that hopefully as their version of record quite soon. At the moment, we've got a number of endorsed articles, as they call them, using again the same technology that eLife used and that others can use too. And then this other shot here is that same information, but that's how they edit it and post it in Katahi. And then their homepage is quite popular with their followers on social media. It's where they showcase all of their work. Although they've got their own website that explains about what they do, and this really showcases the activity that they're having, and it has really good engagement with what they've been doing. So we're trying to encourage more of this sort of collection building and list building for groups, and giving people at Biophysics Colab a place on the web where they can show their expertise, and that applies to lots of other types of group too. So they're a really great example of how this can work and how they came from just an idea really, and then formed this group, named it, branded it, and here we are now with this great thing on the web, then providing the science in a transparent and open way. Which I think so. That's basically covered everything that I wanted to cover today. Time, we've got a few more minutes. You can unmute yourself, ask a question, put your hand up. If you've got any thoughts or feedback or need a bit of clarification or anything, what I will leave you with is that if it's a call to action, basically, that if you're a researcher, start posting preprints. If you're a policymaker, think about these things, and particularly preprint review and curation in your policy. If you work with anyone like scholars, societies, or publishers, that's who we're really trying to push to get onto Sciet, to start doing curation, to start using Katahi and adopt these sorts of models. And if you just want to know more, then get in touch with me. I'm Blue Res on most social media places. And then finally, to link the whole thing back to the Centre for Open Science's strategy for culture change. So we have the infrastructure available. You've seen examples of that. The user experience and user interface should make it easy. I mean, I'm biased, but we've got really talented user experience designers in our teams, and they do a great job. eLife using this. We've got 25 different groups on Sciet in the communities, so we know we're starting to make this more normal for people than the status quo. And because everything's open and transparent, it should be more rewarding. So I'm hoping that what we've been doing aligns very well with what we're seeing across the community at the Centre of Open Science and the Year of Open Science. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Do we have any thoughts or questions? Yeah, so it's that August says something I didn't quite catch. I thought I heard you say that the PDF to JATSX converter was the one provided by bioRxiv. I believe that this converter is 100% proprietary. Um, so we have an agreement with bioRxiv that the conversion that they have done at their typesetting organization, and we get access to that converted JATS XML, and we then turn that into the HTML that you see on the review preprint at eLife or in the enhanced preprint platform. So yeah, it's not the converter software itself from there. So Castido, you have a question?
Hi, thanks a lot for the talk. It's great to hear all these details. I was curious with Mecha, whether like does that enter at all? Whether you have thoughts on it. It seemed like a very non-automated kind of approach, and maybe curious whether that's something you not use.
So Mecha
Thoughts?
is in the Manuscript Exchange format.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, so the XML archives that I just discussed in answer to the previous question, that comes to us as a Mecha file.
Okay.
And we can then use that and the manifest file inside there to interrogate whether we've got the right pieces of the paper. So because we do that from bioRxiv, medRxiv to EPP, you could say that's the interchange format for the article. What we do is have DocMaps, which is yet another standard that describes the changes to the documents, and they will point to the location of the Mecha file. So actually, yes, it is built on Mecha, but only in the sense that it's the Manuscript Exchange rather than the choreographies and things like that. So yeah, we were involved in that some time ago.
So it is fully automated.
Yes, yeah, it is.
And then it's the bioRxiv JATS XML inside of the Mecha, whatever they call it, I guess, package.
Yes, yeah, Mecha zip file basically is what it is. We pull out that XML file from for the bioRxiv JATS XML, pull out the TIFF images, put them in our image server, pull out the supplemental files and host them as well. That's how it works. Yeah, so it's all fully automated. When something gets sent for peer review at eLife, a trigger goes off in our data system, in our data hub, and then we go and fetch the archive at that point and create a preview version of the article for our internal team to see, so they can troubleshoot it. Then when the reviews are posted from Katahi, we pull that information from actually it's from Sciet, where we pull the information from for the peer reviews and all that stuff. And that's all pulled together by the enhanced preprint platform, turned into a PDF and into that HTML view that you see. So that's how it all works.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's more questions in the Q&A, I'll have a minute. Is there? I don't have a Q&A button on my Zoom. Does anybody wants to ask a question? Okay, to unmute or type it again in. I can't seem to access the Q&A. There we go. So just the history show previous versions and changes is the public record. Yes. So in that view that you saw of the timeline, each one of those is a link back to the previous version. You can always see the other versions. Thanks for pasting it into costs, Rebecca. Considering scientific prizes, even including Nobel prizes, how do you think such a change in transparency, particularly the timelines and peer reviews, could improve the input? That's interesting. So sort of tangential to that, we have been talking to an organization who want to look at openly reviewing grant applications, yeah, using our tooling, particularly with a Society group, basically that has a group with all the um, asking people to post their grant applications as preprints and then reviewing those in the open, so that if they're doing all the due diligence on something like that, then they want that to be open for others to use for other potential funders to pick up the same thing and not waste any duplicate any of the effort. So I'd imagine things like prize committees and so on could perhaps do the same. So, but certainly with the ability to get the science out earlier, you'd be in a slot earlier for the cutoff points for prizes and things like that. So I think that's probably adds to the incentive. Do you think shifting to a registered report structure would increase the efficiency of research for articles submitted to eLife Sciences? So um, we do we have for some time accepted registered reports. It's not been the highest of uptakes. One of the biggest ones was actually when we worked with the Centre of Open Science on the cancer biology reproducibility study, where a lot of things were pre-registered in that. So um, yes, I think that's something that's definitely talked about a lot. And I have to get back to you on more details from the editorial team on whether that's featuring in the way that we evolve with these things, but certainly all these ideas are taken on board. Um, so is the AI toolkit in Katari available to submitters to see what the recommendation would be on their submission? So uh, so the AI tools so far um, are used to fetch things into submission. So when somebody submits something, it would already be there, if that makes sense. So we're not yet used. There's lots of AI in Katahi. It's we try and use a sort of opt-in way of using it as well. So it's not on everything, but one of the ideas was to use it to help summarize and link papers and use the sort of the graph between relationships between papers to showcase some things like that. So at the moment, it wouldn't help. The current tool wouldn't help with submitters, but actually some of the future ideas probably would. Uh, have you got any pushback from reviewers for eLife under the new model? Um, so obviously I don't deal so much with the reviewer side, but if something's significant enough that we get pushback, I would have heard about it, and I've not heard a lot about that. So I would say not really. I think in the initial reaction, as I said earlier, to the new model was either great, you're changing things, or oh no, I'm not sure about that, or I'll wait and see. So I think a lot of people have been in the wait and see stage. So there are people who would just say, oh, actually, you're changing the way that this works, and it's not for me. So I think some reviewers have probably politely declined, but we've certainly not had a large amount of resistance in that sense. And it's certainly not a struggle for us to still find reviewers and so on. And the communities are growing. And obviously, using a new model like this is attracting newer people as well. So it sort of balances itself out in that sense. As a reviewer, what would be some of the reasons for me to choose to review under this model as opposed to reviewing for a known journal under a regular peer review model? Right. So this is probably something I should have mentioned is that each of the pieces of the peer review of the review preprint get its own sub DOI as well. So you could link to your review, which is open, and even though it will be posted as anonymous, you see at eLife we don't post reviewers' names unless they ask for it. But if you wanted to claim that, if you like, as your review, and then showcase that in your CV or when talking to colleagues, or use that for a lot of people are saying that one of the great things about the eLife model now is that they can use it for teaching and they can use it to train new people on how to do review. It's certainly something that pre-review are really proud of about what they do, so they can help people learn how to peer review better because everything's in the open. So yeah, it's I think as a reviewer, I would say there's incentive to review with eLife versus the traditional model because everything gets put in the open. And there's also an aspect to with things being less secret, things end up being more cordial. So we all hear stories about reviewers being very terse or specific in the way that they deliver their reviews. The eLife model, particularly with the collaboration that they do on the consultative peer review, means that you get to be part of something that seems a lot more positive in the end, I think. So I think there's definitely time for that. Okay, right. So anything else before we wrap up? Because I think we're just a few minutes over now, and there'll be another session starting soon. Anything else anyone wants to add? Great. Well, you know where I am on the internet. Paul at eLifeSciences.org will get to me. So please do send an email if you're interested in anything more of this. I'll arrange with the organisers to um, share this presentation where I can. And thank you all for coming along and listening. Thank you very much.